Hello everybody, welcome to Adobe Live and this week's weekly creative challenge. I'm Spencer Nugent, I'm an industrial designer, which means I like to do everything, and today we're going to be doing some typography. Now, if you missed the last 2 weeks, fortunately for you here at Adobe Live, we store everything, okay? So you can go back and watch those. We'll be working on a collage that we've been working on for the last 2 weeks, and today we'll be introducing some type to help you tell your story, and I'm going to show you 2 or 3 cool things that you can do to play with type to help tell your story. So first things first, just want to give a little shout out to myself, of course. If you have any questions about me, I'm easy to find online, just at sketchaday.com. Last time as well, we took a look at Adobe stock, tons of free images there that you can play with to help you level up in your presentations and your designs, and in this case our collage, or you can introduce your own photography. And we'll be using Adobe Firefly a little bit today, specifically Firefly plugged into Adobe Express. We're going to be playing with some text effects and using Adobe Fonts. So you want to open up your Adobe Fonts, that's just fonts.adobe.com, and you can take a look at Express, just express.adobe.com, or I guess new.express.adobe.com. Feel free to say hi and shout out in the chat, by the way. Let me know where you're watching from, and we'll get right into it. Okay, so this is our file last time. Now, looking at this file, I've decided a couple of things. I'm deciding that I want to expand this a little bit, just mostly because I like to do that. So you should have this asset. If it's not here right now, it will be available shortly after the stream, and you can follow along again. The great thing about these streams is they're real short, so if you need to watch again, totally easy and simple to do. So I'm going to select my crop tool here, and there's a couple options that pop up. We want to make sure that fill says generated, not fill as in Philip, but right here, fill says generative expand. And here where it says ratio, I'm going to go original ratio. And what this is going to do is it's going to preserve the aspect ratio as I try to expand this. I do have some extra stuff here on a layer. Let's see what Photoshop does with it. But I just want to make this a little bit bigger. If I hold Alt here and expand, I think it's actually going to cause an issue. So hold up. Let me just tweak that real quick. Oops. Let me just tweak that real quick. I think we have this guy here. So I'm gonna, select all this and, doing some keyboard commands here. Apologies. All right. So I've just duplicated that layer. I'm just gonna get rid of the excess, and I think we're good. All right. So now I'm going to crop this, but let's expand, and I'm just going to go a little bit bigger. If I hold Alt, it expands out from the center. So this way I can kind of expand on my presentation. And it's a really fun way to get a little bit more space if you're working. And maybe I do this all the time. I'll start with a file, either I'm drawing or I'm designing something, and I think to myself, I just need more room. Okay, so this is one of my new favorite features in Adobe Photoshop specifically. And like we talked about last time with the rule of thirds, okay, I'm trying to make sure I preserve kind of the general placement of things in this image. So I kind of want my astronaut to be right in this upper quadrant, and that creates a little bit more interest, much like a musical composition has variety. So here, I'll just hit enter. It's set to Generative Expand, and let's see what it comes up with. So hello everyone again in the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube or here on behance.net. Good to see you. Good to have you here. Let's see. All right, looks like it's still working here. All right, so we've got our expand in. We've got a couple options. Looks like my pixelated effect here did not expand with it, but that's okay. All right, and again, with Generative Expand, one of the nice things is you do have these options that you can play with, and we can worry about this border perimeter stuff here in a little bit. One thing I didn't show you last time with masks, however, and this is just a quick fix, I'm just going to drag this over, and let's scale this up slightly so I still have my pixel effect here. So we have this layer, right, which is kind of our clouds. With masks, what we can do is just create a mask real quick. I'm just going to click on the mask button. And with our brush, you can just hit B on the keyboard. I'm going to right click and make sure that I have a nice soft round brush. Make it real big here. And I just like to check over the canvas a little bit. All right, so anything that's black, okay, is going to be hidden on our mask. So I have my color selected black, I have the soft brush, and I'm just gonna erase on this perimeter just a little bit. All right, so we've expanded on our composition, we've cleaned up a little bit, we still have our area of focus, and we've made this a little bit bigger. All right, we've got our window here as well, and I believe I should be able, oh, I've got my auto select layer selected there. All right, I should be able to just drag, I don't know what's happening here. Oh, these are my adjustments. That's why I'm going to group these together. And now I should be able to move this window. So I can move this window anywhere I want. Maybe I'll move it somewhere here. Okay. All right. So text, we're telling a story. We have some images. Images themselves kind of tell a story. This, like I had explained before, I love space, I love bright colors, and I like this idea of kind of a window or portal into somewhere else. So to talk about type, I also included another file here in your working files. This text I added, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's start with our single line. So the thing with typography is typography, you can kind of think of it as positive and negative space. So each character, just like language, has a phonetic value, it has a symbolic meaning, and even the gesture of the letters themselves have character. So let's say I have this line, I can't wait to see you, okay? Something that, you know, depending on who's saying it, might sound kind of nice. And I have some other layers here just to show you how text can help convey certain feelings. So as you select your typefaces, you want to think about what kind of message are you trying to convey, what kind of feeling are you trying to embody, and how can you do that with the text. So here's another example of some text. This is a really tall and skinny typeface. I forgot the name of this one, JetLab. Right, pretty interesting typeface here. So a lot taller, elongated, almost feels a little bit retro, right? If you were to look at some older sci-fi material, you might see some typefaces like that, the rounded corners and so forth on each of the characters, and the spacing of the letters as well. Here we have another one. This one is Zicklets. By the way, if you have the type tool selected, okay, you can just click on each of these and you should be able to edit these just fine. Here's another one here, a little bit more, I would say this is perhaps more casual. This is a typeface called Salted. All right, so you might be wondering, how do you get all these typefaces into Photoshop? Well, it's really easy. When we go to Adobe Fonts here, you can search for whatever you want. So let's say you're feeling fun. All right, that's a pretty simple word, but I'm just gonna click fun. And I should mention, by the way, I'm going like a million miles an hour here, my apologies. On the home page here, you do have curated selections of typefaces. So if you're curious about one, this one's kind of interesting. Kofo Flick Flack. Say that 10 times fast, but be careful saying that. Kofo Flick Flack. All right, so I could click on that and you'll be taken to a page where you get kind of a taste of this typeface, right? And you can see some visual examples here. And thanks Val for posting that. That is fonts.adobe.com, and you can see these samples. You also have recommendations. Hey, if you like this typeface, here's another one that you can look at. Now, this is really a great page. I remember back in the day, I'm probably going to age myself here. It was really hard sometimes to find the right typeface. You had to go everywhere. You had to manage those files on each computer individually. The wonderful thing here is with your Creative Cloud subscription, if you did not know this, now you do get access to a lot of typefaces and you can just install them. So here in the sample text window, since we're dealing with space, I can think of a few phrases. All right, I could think of maybe this one, my space. Again, maybe I'm aging myself, but I like this short phrase, my space. Oh, not my pace, my space. Can't type today. So I can get a preview of that and I can even scale this up so I can get a sense for what this might look like. All right, my space, that looks kind of cool. And if I like this typeface, I can hit add font. All right, and here I have a little notification. It says I can manage them in the Creative Cloud app. But more importantly, now when I go to Adobe Photoshop, and let's say I want to change this typeface here, I can select it with the type tool. I'm just going to hit Control A or Command A on my keyboard. And now, I think it was called Flick Flack, right? So now here in our type window on the, I forgot what this is called, but I just call it the modifier bar. You can click on the name of the font, and then you can see all the options you have here. If you don't like doing it that way, there's also the contextual toolbar here that pops up for you in Photoshop, and it does have those options. So I can click here, and under filters, is it filters? There's an option here for me to select recent. I forgot where it is, so apologies. But we're going to just go here, and I'm going to scroll up and see if Flick Flack has popped up, or you can just type it in. There it is. Kofo Flick Flack. Oh, that's really hard to say. So there it is. And once I click on that, now I have my type in Photoshop. Pretty simple, pretty easy. I didn't have to download anything. I didn't have to find it on my computer. I didn't have to install it or manage it with a separate app. It's just there. Now with typefaces, you do have options built in. If you go to Window, let's see, where are you? Oh, there it is, Type. If you go to Type, panels, I can open the character panel or paragraph panel. I'm going to open the character panel here, and you'll see some options. Let's drag this over into the window a little bit closer so you can see, and I'll pull this down. So my character options here, I have a bunch of different things that I can do. So I'm just doing a single line of text right now, and I can adjust the size of the text. A little trick here though, for those who don't know, when I first saw this, it blew my mind at the time, but you can actually hover over, say, the text size icon here and just click and drag side to side, and that will scale your text up or down. Just a really quick way of getting some adjustments. So type is, I would say it's one of the dark arts of design. You could call it that, because you can go really deep on type. Like I said, each typeface has a different vibe, a different feel. And if you're working on this for yourself and you're pulling in your own images, you get to decide what feel you want for your piece. So that may mean scaling things up a bit. We can also adjust the spacing between lines. I'll get to that in a minute. We can adjust, and if you hover over here, we can adjust the kerning. I always confuse kerning and leading. Like I said, I'm an industrial designer. I just think I can do everything, but I'm just a visitor here in graphic design, okay? So I can adjust the kerning, meaning I can space the letters further apart. Oh, where do we go? It's not letting me do that right now. All right, I could pull them in close, or maybe it's here. Tracking, I think. Okay, so I can space these letters further apart. There we go, tracking. Or I can pull them in tighter if I want. All right, so if I go negative, they get a little tighter. All right, so visually you can play with how close the letters are together. All the graphic designers are cringing. You can pull these letters closer together, or you can space them apart. Entirely up to you. Of course, if I go too spacey, right, it kind of, look at how even this line of text changes. If you want to commit your changes, by the way, you can just hit escape on the keyboard. I'm just going to transform these and scale them in. But here's the line of text. Now we have tracking set to 200 here. I'm going to move this bar out of the way. And if I duplicate this, just holding Alt on the keyboard, and then let's go ahead and set tracking to say 25. See how those two lines of text have completely different feels to them just with that one change. Same typeface, but just that one change. All right, so that's an example of how flexible you can get with your type. There's other options here like superscript, all caps. You can adjust the scale of letters. You can adjust the baseline. But I did want to show you the multi-line option. So there's two ways to do this. One is I can take the single line of text and just hit enter on the keyboard with the text edit tool active, and now I have two lines of text. But you might be thinking, well, I kind of want this portion of the text to see you to be a bit closer to I can't wait. So how do we do that? Well, here we can adjust the leading between the two lines. See, I had to check myself there again, but we can adjust the leading between the two lines. And instead of auto, I can specify. If I hover over and let's say click 24, you can see that Photoshop has now pulled these closer together. It's kind of illegible, right? So now I'm going to go to 48. That's too much. So let's do something like 32. All right. So if you want these to be a bit I don't know why that keeps popping up. If we want these to be a bit closer together, that's one way to do it. And then if we want the text to kind of be the same width, that's one where you kind of have to just eyeball, at least in Photoshop. I'll show you an easier way to do that in Adobe Express as well, once we get into text effects there. And then I'm just going to adjust my spacing. Let's do 36. And if you want to make smaller adjustments as well, I guess it's not letting me do that here. So let's do 42. See what we get. All right. So now I have this block of text here. We can scale it up, and it looks reasonably justified left to right. You can also change the color of your text as well. If the text is selected or active here, I can jump into my color picker and select the color for the text, and it should be updated just like that. All right, so let's go back to our collage here. All right, maybe I want to add some text. Like I said, I've got this window, and in your file you should have, I did not open the most recent one, so I'm going to just recreate this, but you should have some text in a layer, and it should say open. So I'm going to transform this and make it a little bit bigger, like so, and I want this to be next to my window here, something like that. And I don't like this typeface for this specific application, so I'm going to go to one of my favorites, Bebes New. There's a running joke that designers always use this typeface, but I'm going to go for it anyways. So I'm going to use this typeface, and again, we can play with the color. Also, if you want to adjust the color of the typeface, you can do that in the properties window over here to the right. It's right here as well, and it's over here in the color picker. One of my running jokes is that in Photoshop, because it's such an awesome app, you can do the same thing 5 different ways if you want, and here's 3 options for changing the color. So now I'm going to click, and let's see. I'm just going to go with maybe just a pale color here. I'm trying to get something that contrasts just enough, but isn't too in the way. And we can always adjust the color later, but what I want to show you is that you can also transform your text, right? You can do some cool things. Let's say I want to kind of fake in a little bit of a shadow in my text. I'm thinking, oh, maybe this text is on the ground here, okay? And I want to cast a shadow onto the ground. So what I'm going to do, this is just my way of doing it. I'm going to duplicate this layer. All right, so to do that, you can go Layer, New, layer via copy, or Control J or Command J. And now I'm going to hit transform, Control T. And if you hold Command or Control on the keyboard over one of these manipulator boxes here, we can just drag this down. Okay. And I'm just going to eyeball this to where I'm going to create a little bit of a shadow here. And then we'll just dip our toes ever so briefly into layer effects. All right. Because we're going to cover that next time, so I hope to see you. All right, so here where it says normal, I guess we did do that last time. We did do a little bit of screen. I'm going to go ahead and select something like linear burn or multiply. All right, so if I zoom in here now, you can see that my text, it's almost like a little faux shadow here. All right, so next time I'll show you how with a filter we can make that feel a little bit more integrated into the grass. Okay, like it's actually a shadow on that ground. But more importantly, let me just group these together, and this will give me a chance to talk about a really cool feature in Adobe Express as well. So there's one idea for you, okay? Play with different typefaces, see if you can find one that works for your piece, play with the colors, play with the spacing of the letters, all right? And then play with transforms and see how that works for you. And then the next thing I want to show you here is in Adobe Express. So this was originally part of Adobe Firefly. It's been put into Adobe Express, but you do have this option to create text effects. So if you've never used Express before, don't worry about it. It's pretty simple to use. All I want you to do is hit this plus. We're going to create something that is 16 by 9. And I'm thinking of some words. All right. Here it's kind of put me into this YouTube video template. I'm just going to get out of that. And we want to add text. All right, so I'm going to click text here on the toolbar and hit add your text. Cool. So my text is going to be my space. I just want to say my space. That's it. Now we have a couple options here. Okay, we can pick some different typefaces. So where it says source sans here. I'm gonna scroll down and let's see if I can pick something chunky. I kind of like this Alpharn regular, kind of feels spacey as well. So with this selected, I'm gonna go down here in this section of the Adobe Express app, and we're gonna select text effects. Now, text effects is basically using generative AI to fit effects into the shape of the character. So not only does the yes, you're in my top 8, Val, for sure. Not only does the shape of the characters, the spacing, and the typeface itself convey a certain feeling, but now we can add effects to that. All right, there's some sample effects. Let's start there and see what happens. I'm going to start with this gold drip effect. Let's see what happens here. And what Express is doing is it's, again, plugging to Firefly. It's generating an effect, and it's going to apply those to the characters. And here we have a preview of what this might look like. All right, so let's scale this up a bit. Pretty cool. So if that's the kind of effect, whoa, dropped my little guy here. If that's the kind of effect you're after, you can easily do that in Adobe Express. Let's see, it's given us a couple options as well that we can play with, just like generative works inside Photoshop. So you always have options, okay? We can export this and we can put it into our composition as well. So let's say you want to come up with your own thing. Actually, when you click on the samples here, it does give you an example of the prompt. So I want something, this is going to be maybe weird, but I want some tropical flowers, rainbow colors, variety, realistic, and maybe some birds in there. All right, let's see what it comes up with. And I'm going to hit generate and see what it does. That's exactly right, Carol. It's like style on steroids for sure. It's a really fun way, I think, to get some different effects that you might not have considered into your composition, and it's really quick. That's the best part. So for those who are more experienced, if you've maybe even done something like this with masks or having to actually compose things, you can actually get maybe 80%, 90% of the way there using text effects, and then do your thing, use that experience to refine. All right, there's a couple more options here. We can change the typeface if you want, right? There's a couple options here that you can pick, but for the sake of time, we're going to move along. And now I do want to show you one more cool thing. So remember that thing I did in Photoshop where I kind of justified all the text? We can do that in Adobe Express real quick. I'm just going to, under text layout here, select dynamic. And now, it's not letting me do it right now. There I was trying to show y'all this really cool thing. I think I have to hit a new line. There we go. So when I hit enter, what Express does is it automatically scales and justifies everything for me automatically. I don't have to do it. So all you have to do is hit enter. So if I delete that, right, it just says my space. And then when I hit enter, it gives me those 2 lines. All right, so I'm going to go back to my original configuration here. And now we're going to hit download. And I could download this. It's going to give me a PNG file. If you have access to the working files for today, I do have 3 that I've created already, and you can drag those in. So I'm just going to drag this into Photoshop, and you'll see an example of that here, and we can compose that as we want. All right, so remember, we do have our grid set up. You may have to tweak that if you did the expand like I did, but at the very least, you have some extra room. You can play with those text effects, play with text inside of Adobe Photoshop, import some typefaces, and get creative and get playing. Thanks so much for joining me on this week's weekly creative challenge. It's been fun. It's been fast as always. And definitely stick around here on Adobe Live. Up next, we have pro tips. And it looks like it's going to be really good. This is Ted, and he's going to be talking about generative composites in Adobe Photoshop. He's really talented. So stick around for that. I hope to see you next week. Definitely check out the files, and much love to you. Have a happy Wednesday, and I'll see you next time here on Adobe Live. Take care, y'all.